Mix, what is you're with Nordavind now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who was actually on that team? It's like a Norwegian team or something.
It's actually like an international team at this point. So it's a lot of like kind of like more experienced, kind of like older.
Who are the most famous players?
Tensky's on it, Mertz, Murbit, HS, I'm sure you remember, and Super,
sure.
Who was on a Gambit Youngsters before Hobbit came in.
He was the guy who got kicked, Which actually, if people don't know, dude, this is how you know everyone who pretend, because everyone does that thing where, like, when Gambit gets good, they're like, I was following from ages ago and all that. Half of them don't even mention that Hobbit wasn't on the team. And secondly, they also, this is how you know they didn't watch Gambit Youngsters, they also just assume that was just an obvious upgrade. Like, what are you on about? That guy was doing fucking sick. Like, he actually looked like a banger in that team. I actually thought that was a scandal at first. I remember thinking, like, so the Gambit org raises this whole team of youngsters that's beating everyone, and then they just take a guy out for the washed up guy from years ago. Like, this is fucked. I remember thinking that's like a bit of a brutal org move. What's that guy actually like in your team?
Like a stroke of like brute like luck, because it was like the reason they had to remove him is because he couldn't get like a Russian visa or something to like boot camp with him, because he's actually Estonian. So it's not even like they're like, yeah, we need to upgrade this guy. It was just like, well, shit, we can't boot camp this guy, so we need to get Hobbit in.
Right.
He's still, I think, at the moment on our team, he's still trying to like find his place again. He's trying to find his group, because obviously the Gambit Youngsters team was literally the only team he's ever played on, the only group of guys. So it's a bit different to go from like a team of like 4 other Russian dudes to playing with like 2 Danes, an Estonian dude, a German who's IGLing for the first time. So that's like kind of been one of like my personal like projects, like right as I got onto the team, is trying to figure out how to like get this guy back on all firing all cylinders.
And HS is from Estonia as well, right?
Yeah.
Dude, one of my pet peeves, this actually will lead into a topic here, is when people who are plebs just go, those flags are the same. They should play on the same team. So people now would, if they heard that mix, they'll go, wait a minute, ROPS, HS, and then the super guy, they're all 3 Estonian. What if you made an Estonian team? It's like, listen, think about it for a second. These motherfuckers escaped the Bane pit of Estonia, where they would have been nobody, never had a pro career, and your move now is like, listen, you're all playing for different teams. ROPS in your case, maybe you're one of the best teams that players in the world, you get paid an enormous amount of money. Quit all that and just go and make a novelty team for my literal 5-minute gimmick like appeal. I won't even watch the team if it's shit. And then basically also, it's only 3/5 of the team, just get 2 other players that have the same flag and have at it. Because by the way, what I'm going to lead into now is somehow HLTV dreams are manifesting. Back in the day when Space Soldiers was around, and then Watson was on other teams, and every person was like, why does it work playing Space Soldiers? Probably doesn't want to make 100 euros a month, you daft fucking cunt. Are you out your mind? Like, not again, all you're doing is collecting flags. What is this shit? Motherfucker. Anyway, so basically, they're going to do it now, though, apparently, except are they? Because obviously Xantares is still in big, but bizarrely, he's listed as like, he might be in this new project. I'd love to be his teammate. It's like, bro, is there another person called Xantares? Like, are you kidding me? So anyway, the story is they're going to maybe make the super team. So the only 3 players everyone gives a fuck about is obviously Woxic, Xantares, and Calyx. Xantares and Calyx obviously did play together. And then the point was they'd never had all 3 of them together in a team, and everyone always wondered because they're all like straight fire players in theory, right? What do you actually think of even the premise of making a team like this? Like, would you actually watch this team? Would you be interested, Mix?
I'd be interested in it just because I feel like, especially if they have like those group of players, they'd be really interesting to watch. Just because like I don't know who's like would actually IGL on that team.
True.
Like, I don't know how that would work, and it's like it's a bunch of players that like Xantares and Woxic playing on like 10 sensitivity, just like zooming their mouses around, just like. I'm really curious as to like what their play style would be and like how they would play and how that would work. Because I can't imagine they would be a very consistent team just based on the players they would have. But they would be a team that would be like really annoying to play, I imagine, and like annoying team to prep for and play.
Okay. What do you think, Vince?
I don't see why Xantares would leave big to go across to this kind of mixed team. I don't really see it as being a career move that's positive for him. I mean, you go back to the Space Soldiers days, for example, and you had players like Paz there. That was definitely one major, I think, was their IGL for a while. Maybe these are guys that can get back into the fray again, but I just look at it and I question why Xantares would do it. Like, yes, Big are having a bit of a rough time of it. They're up and down. But for you to step into that team, you go from like a guaranteed good wage, good position, you're going to the tournaments, you're going to be doing well at most of them, to now a huge question mark over your career. And I just wonder if it's a backstep for him personally. I think for Voxic it makes sense, right? Because obviously Cloud9 didn't end the way he was hoping for. I still think that was really unfortunate for him and the rest of the team. Obviously before that was Mouse Sports.
Yes.
So for him it would make sense, but for Xantara as a player of his stature, I don't think it does.
I also have to say, like, the reason why people do tend to make fun of like fans that stack a team like this in like the dream HLTV lineup is like there is a concept in teams of like resources and who can take what role, and there has to be like, there can't be like insane overlap. There has to be like, some distinction between like what I want to do can't be what you want to do, otherwise only one of us might be able to do it at a time. Like these sorts of teams, unfortunately, do tend to be like, if I had to guess, Xantaras and Calyx are probably the same player. So already it's like, well, who's going to not do what they would do ideally?
I'm pretty sure
like,
even Inmore is like a pretty similar player to them in terms of like his stats on HLTV are like 1.22 or something. They're getting him because it's like another like star Turkish player, with, like insane name or something. And
let's be real, like that is a factor in CS. That like the interesting thing about CS is it's not really about stacking stars. It's about having like some stars and then players that fit around them, and you make an awesome team, don't you? Like in fact, I think right now one of the best teams is G2, and they clearly don't have like 5 stars. They have nothing approaching that, but they take players that normally people would be like they're shit, but then they work around the stars well, so it all works out. So the problem I have with a team like this is, first of all, it would be like the phase factor. They would never all frag out. So the dream that you're having that they all just shoot everyone in the head probably doesn't happen, I'm afraid. Like Counter-Strike isn't a game where you just play any spot. Like you tend to play the spots that work for you, and you have the system that works for you, and you have the guy that creates space for you, or you create space for it. There's a logic to how it goes. And I have to say, it's rare that you ever get the teams that stack these teams that are even actually close to what you'd expect. Like I always thought even the classic FaZe clan, the Carrigan one, that didn't even really work like you thought on paper. Like basically when they made that team, people were like, oh my God, look, it's like Rain, Olaf, Meister, Guardian, Nico. What it ended up being was like Nico and Guardian have such distinct roles they can carry most of the time, and then Rain is now just the most overqualified entry fragger in the entire fucking world, and Olaf Meister is your support player. Like, listen, if that works, God bless, but like in that scenario, like sadly, the joke is, obviously, if you could have swapped Olaf Meister for Zipnix, you'd do it tomorrow, wouldn't you? If you could swap like fucking Rain for, even at the time, he wasn't even that good config or something, you'd have done it in a heartbeat. Like it would probably just make you a better team, no matter whether the player's better or not. What do you think on this mix? Because obviously some of the teams you've been, I mean, the Cloud9 team, on paper, that team didn't look that good, but it was having all these great matchups, it was creating scenarios where they could win against better players. What do you think about the team dynamic aspect?
Yeah, like I think even sometimes like even like what I would have wanted ErikHillestad to be, rather than like him having to come in and like he has to like try to be like the star player, right? Like he's like the star rifle at first, then he has to like switch to the op roles, like ErikHillestad maybe even playing like the same role that he was in Astralis, which was just like an insanely like overqualified role player.
Sure.
He was like, he did really good in like that Zipnix role, right? Because I think sometimes it's even harder to find someone that's going to play like that Zipnix role and actually do it well than it is to find like another like sick rifler that's just like has sick game, puts up decent stats. Yeah, like it's all about like chemistry, like finding people. Like for me, I think it's more about like you have like the roles, like you can have like different types of roles within a team, right? But you need people that are like going to actually fit into those and play within the system. And you need people that are going to like, there's always like an element of like natural chemistry between players, right?
Yes.
It's like, it's not something you can always predict. Like Astralis like wanted to keep KRB, and then like, okay, well fuck, he left, so now we got to get Magis. And then it just turns out the chemistry between everyone is just insane, and they go on to win like 3 majors. And even the same thing kind of happened with Gambit, right? They had to replace Supra, they bring in Hobbit. Oh, it turns out this is actually a really good fit. Suddenly our players just elevated to another level because everyone else is feeling like 10 times more comfortable around him. So it's like, it's a really hard thing to pin down. And like, yeah, you can't just stack like, sick riflers and then all put them in the same role. It might like work at first within the honeymoon period. But eventually you're going to like go down like a couple losses. Someone's going to start to feel uncomfortable. You might have to like try to change some things around. And it's something that I think especially can just like spiral out of control real quickly, where you just start to lose like a real identity in the team. And it's just like, it just turns into like 5 players just like running around doing their own thing.
Sure. What do you think, Vince? Because I've always found that actually to be probably like the most fascinating part. It's almost like the ghost in the machine element of Counter-Strike. Is like you actually can never know from the players on paper what the team will even be like when they play, right? Sometimes it works in a way you never expect. Sometimes it's just shit and like, you're banging your head against a brick wall forever.
No, 100% agree with you. I think it's one of the biggest components that people often overlook when they come up with their dream teams is personalities have to mesh. There has to be balance. You can't have 5 players that all want to do the same roles and frag out and be, the Billy Big Dick of the team. There's going to have to be players that take more of a back step, and they support those. They facilitate those plays. They allow the Coldzera's to shine, these kind of plays. If you think of like Taco back in the day. So yeah, I think this is a component of not just like teams, but also like broadcast in many aspects of life. If you have personalities that distinctly do not get along with each other, they rub each other the wrong way. CS is such a mental-based esport, in my opinion. I think a lot of it comes down to your mentality, your positivity, how you are doing inside here, and that's going to have impacts across the board on how you perform. So if you're playing with people that you either don't get along with or people that you don't mesh with, that is going to show in terms of raw stats and in terms of raw performances. So it's never as easy as just these 5 players are good, therefore they will be a good team. That's often not the case. I mean, think of how many times we've seen this in French Counter-Strike over the years. Teams that on paper should have been god tier and always underperformed. So it's not.
It can even be the case that it's not like any of the personalities are like toxic or anything. Like it's not like anyone's just like straight up toxic or like doesn't like each other. But like sometimes the personalities just don't really naturally mesh that well with each other.
Yeah,
it's like even like when like I felt like when like the C9 team was being built, the Colossus team, it's like it's such a tough thing to do, to build like a new team from scratch with like 5 brand new players that have like never played with each other. Because like the odds that like all those guys are going to get along super well and it's going to mesh like instantly is like super low. Like I feel like when you're trying to build like a new team kind of like that, it's like you especially need to like focus on like, okay, yeah, maybe this like first iteration won't work out, but you need to find like, like the core of the roster that like can move forward together. That's like going to be really sick together.
Yes, that's also the reason I think, again, fans overlook that. It's the reason why until you know it doesn't work anymore, you stick with cores. Like, it doesn't matter that, one player's having a slight slump for these 3 months, because the idea is if we can get him through it, like, look what we fucking have to build on. Like, we don't have to start from scratch and build it all the way up, do we? We already have, like, an understanding, all the rest of it. I always thought that was the real secret Astralis had, by the way. It wasn't just that they were all the best in their role all the time. It was that, like, they had that Virtus Pro factor where it's like, when this guy's not, like, if Depru drops off for 3 months, Magus just frags the fuck out, and from his role, he carries the game. It's like, you can get through the hard times, you can take everything that you built and learned, but you can also sort of survive the ups and downs, sort of the stock market swings, as it were. You don't have to sell. You got the diamond hands, blah blah blah. I've just tried looking on fucking Twitter about crypto, haven't I? Again, whatever. Listen, I'm going to work everything I can into this episode. Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or be a pleb and don't.